The future, part 2. Here we're going to just quickly review the use of present simple for the future, and we're looking at the conjunctions of time that can be used, and quite a number of conjunctions of time can be used. I'm just giving a few examples here. So when I see him, I will call you, let's sneak out the moment they go to bed, and as soon as the traffic light turns green, accelerate. So you can see in yellow that we've used the present simple, and in each case we're indicating the time. The point that I should make here is that we are using these conjunctions of time with the present simple. Let's just look at a detail here which says that we can use the present simple after conjunctions of time. We can also use it with some conditionals. Now we'll look at this one. This could be called a conditional as well. Instead of calling this a time clause, you could call this a conditional clause, and the whole thing a conditional sentence. But here we definitely have a conditional, so you can go to the party provided you do your homework. And this would be do somewhere in the future. Provided is a disguised conditional, but nonetheless a conditional. Let's move down now to look at the next tense. And we have the future continuous. So we're talking about the future with a new tense here. And the structure is will plus be plus a verb with ing. You can also use it with going to. We use the future continuous for various reasons, or a few reasons, and one of them is just to be polite. So, will you be joining us at the lake this weekend is nicer or more polite than will you join us at the lake this weekend. We can use it for arrangements. So, we are arriving at Heathrow at 2 p.m. and Charles will be picking us up in his van. As you can see, this one here is not the future continuous, it's just the present continuous. But as we learned in part 1, the video part 1 for the future, this present continuous here can be used for arrangements. But what we're looking at now is that the future continuous can also be used for arrangements, and they're kind of interchangeable here, so I've used both just to demonstrate the fact that they're quite similar. Let's go to the next use of the future continuous. So this is future events in progress. And this time next week, I will be drinking coconut water in Sri Lanka. Let's look at a diagram that will help us understand. If I was to just use the present continuous, I am drinking coconut water, you would obviously think that it's happening now. Started in the past, happening now, and will continue into the future and end at some point. Well, when I place will in front of this, I essentially move it forward to an imaginary point in the future. So we now have I guess you could say, an imaginary now, 1 week into the future. So he'll just say, this time next week, I will be drinking coconut water in Sri Lanka. So it's the same kind of action, just we're now imagining it in the future. And another example, I will be living in Paris by November. So in November, you will be there, living there. You will have started sometime before that, and you will continue into an indefinite, until an indefinite point in the future. The next tense we look at is the future perfect. You can see the structure, will plus have plus past participle. Lisa will have finished university by next winter. So we're looking at completed and finished actions and events, and in this case, finishing studying at university. And this is what it would kind of look like. This is one way of demonstrating it. There's quite a few diagrams out there, different diagrams trying to show you how the present perfect works, but this should be good enough. You have an action or an activity. Well, this is the one we want here. So you have an action or activity or event that's been going for some time, and then it finishes just before now. Because we're using will, we're sort of imagining the future. We're imagining a now in the future. And we're saying that whatever is going on will finish sometime shortly before this point, so next winter. If it had just been the present perfect, it's a similar thing. So you've got an action going on, and then just before now, it finishes. So you can see the similarity in terms of what goes on. It's just all pushed forward into the future. Another example, the house will have been renovated before the cold weather starts. So the renovation has obviously started before when this person is speaking. So they're saying this right now. So the renovations are already in progress, presumably, and they will continue for some time. But what we know is that they will be finished before the cold weather starts. And the important thing to note is that we like to use by and before with this particular tense with the future perfect. So now the future perfect continuous, it's will plus have plus been plus an ing verb. Lisa will have been studying for 7 years by next winter when she graduates. Now with this tense, it doesn't really matter if it's finished or not, because it could be finished or it could not be finished, or it might not be finished, sorry. And what we're really interested in here is this, it's the length of time. So when you want to talk about a length of time leading up to the future, we've got the future perfect continuous. Let's look at a note. We are interested in how long, so we use for, and we should note that the use of for there. The diagram is here. If it had been the present perfect continuous, the one we're probably more familiar with, this is what you would be thinking, is that it has started at some point in the past, it's continuing, and at the present point, it may have finished. It is possible. It could have recently finished with this tense, or it could be continuing. And so when we use it for the future, it's the same thing. It's from the point of speaking, it has already started, it's continuing, and it may or may not finish at this point, which is next winter. All we're really concerned with is the length of time that it's been going on. Another example is by August we will have been living here for 3 months. Again, we don't necessarily think that this is going to finish after the 3 months. And the last point to make is that native English speakers don't necessarily obey these general rules, and this applies to the previous video, so part 1 of the future. When you look at, say, a written text in a newspaper or elsewhere, when you listen to native English speakers talk, either radio, TV, or just in person, you might notice that when they talk about the future, they're not precisely following the rules as we understand them in the sort of the formal grammar. But it's not usually a problem. It's fairly easy to understand what somebody means, even if they're not obeying the rule exactly. The reason I mention it is that if you see language around the place that's not obeying the rule, it doesn't mean that you've misunderstood the rules. It's that they're not really being strictly obeyed. Okay, and that's the end of the future.